I'm Celeste Brighton, and for 32 years, I existed as the forgotten child in a household that reserved all recognition for male offspring. At 18, my parents handed my brother a check worth $180,000 to cover his medical education. When I requested assistance with my university expenses, my father met my gaze directly and declared, "Young women have no use for academic credentials. Your priority should be securing a suitable spouse." Consequently, I juggled 3 separate employment positions. I operated on barely 5 hours of rest each night throughout my undergraduate years. I earned my degree with highest honors and navigated my way through Stanford Medical School entirely through my own resources, without receiving a single cent from my family. A dozen years down the road, I achieved the position of cardiothoracic surgeon, joining a small group of women in this specialized field. Yet during my brother's engagement celebration the previous month, my father addressed 150 attendees and presented Preston as our family's sole accomplished offspring. He remained completely unaware that the woman his son planned to marry was someone whose life I had preserved on my surgical table 3 years prior. Before I continue with what transpired next, I'd appreciate if you'd consider liking and subscribing, though only if this narrative resonates with you personally. Leave a comment sharing your location and current time. Now, allow me to transport you back to the beginning of this journey. My childhood unfolded in Ridgewood, Connecticut, one of those pristine communities where each property appeared magazine-worthy, and every household concealed secrets beneath their flawless exteriors. Our residence occupied the terminus of a peaceful cul-de-sac, featuring a 2-vehicle garage, traditional shutters, and a stone walkway bordered by carefully maintained hedges that my mother tended every Sunday following church services. My father, Edmund Brighton, invested 3 decades ascending the corporate hierarchy until securing the position of chief financial officer at a medium-sized financial services firm. He maintained a uniform wardrobe of light blue dress shirts daily, meticulously pressed and starched, complemented by a Rolex timepiece he purchased upon receiving his promotion. That watch represented his achievement, tangible evidence that dedication yielded rewards for deserving individuals. Within our household, unwritten regulations governed behavior, the type absorbed through observation rather than explicit instruction. Preston received personal transportation to school in my father's luxury sedan. I rode public transit. Preston obtained academic tutoring when his performance declined. When I requested similar support, my father responded, "That's unnecessary. Young women simply need adequate studying to manage." Preston's athletic competitions became family occasions. My academic achievements? My mother attended once. My father never appeared. My mother, Vivian, dedicated herself to homemaking, gentle-voiced, perpetually mediating conflicts. Whenever I challenged the established order, she would touch my hand softly and explain, "Your father implements these measures because he cares. He's attempting to safeguard you." Safeguard me from what, exactly? Achievement? I consistently ranked highest in my academic class throughout every year. Honor recognition. National scholarship recipient. Universities contacted me with offers before I submitted applications, yet none of this registered as significant. Not to him. Within my father's worldview, daughters represented poor investments. We constituted obligations awaiting transfer to another man's custody, and I stood on the verge of discovering precisely what that conviction would ultimately cost. The summer preceding my first university year, my mother prepared her signature meatloaf for dinner. She exclusively made meatloaf when significant developments were pending. Celebrations, career advancements, major announcements. I had turned 18. My acceptance notification from the University of Connecticut had arrived, accompanied by a partial scholarship covering the majority of tuition, though I still required approximately $15,000 annually to proceed. I recall smoothing that letter across the dining surface, my pulse racing with hope I hesitated to acknowledge. "I've been accepted," I announced, "with scholarship funding. I just need assistance covering the remaining costs." My father lifted the letter. He didn't examine it thoroughly. He merely glanced at the letterhead before placing it beside his dinner plate. "Those funds are designated for Preston," he stated, swirling the expensive whiskey in his glass as though executing a business calculation, which, in his perspective, he was. Your brother requires a professional career. He'll eventually need to provide for a family. You," he finally acknowledged me, "simply need to locate an appropriate husband." I turned toward Preston. He was 14 at that point, hunched over his device, feigning obliviousness to the conversation. He offered no comment. Neither did my mother. The quietness pervading that room exceeded the volume any confrontation could have generated. I carefully folded the notification, slipped it into my pocket, and voiced the only response I could formulate. Understood. That evening, I refrained from weeping in my bedroom. I didn't release my frustration into my pillow. Instead, I positioned myself at my desk, activated my computer, and initiated searches for part-time employment opportunities near campus. I submitted 3 applications before midnight concluded because in that instant, I reached a determination. I would never request anything from my father again, and I maintained that commitment. University became an endless succession of early wake-up calls and lukewarm coffee. First position: server at a restaurant 2 blocks from campus. I handled the morning shift from 5 until 9, pouring beverages for truck drivers and senior citizens before rushing to my initial class still wearing my stained apron. Second position: library staff member. Afternoons and evenings, organizing books and operating the circulation desk. I mastered studying between patron interactions, absorbing organic chemistry while processing book returns. Third position: weekend mathematics instructor for secondary school students, the identical service my father declined to finance when I occupied their age bracket. I averaged 5 hours of sleep nightly throughout 4 years. I didn't return home during holidays. I informed my mother I had additional shifts scheduled, which was accurate. What I didn't mention was my inability to tolerate sitting at that table observing Preston unwrap gifts purchased with funds that could have transformed my circumstances. I wore identical sneakers for 2 consecutive years. When the sole began separating, I applied adhesive and continued wearing them. Those shoes transported me to classes, to employment, and ultimately across the graduation platform. Highest honors, a grade point average of 3.98, leading my graduating class. I forwarded my parents an invitation to the ceremony. My mother responded via text message. "Incredibly proud of you, darling. However, Preston has a crucial athletic match that day. We'll acknowledge your achievement when you visit home." I graduated without family present. A professor I barely recognized shook my hand and remarked, "Whatever path you pursue from here, you've legitimately earned it." I shed tears in the parking area for 10 minutes. Then I composed myself, entered my vehicle, and drove to the library to return my late materials. That phase had concluded, but the most challenging portion was commencing. I submitted applications to 12 medical institutions. 3 extended acceptance. I selected Stanford not primarily because of its prestigious reputation, though it certainly possessed that quality, but because they provided the most comprehensive financial assistance package: loans, grants, work-study opportunities. I assembled it like pieces of a patchwork covering, and somehow it maintained integrity. 4 years of medical education, 6 years of residency training, 2 years of fellowship, 12 years of my existence constructing something nobody in my family believed I could construct. I concentrated on cardiothoracic surgery, among the most rigorous specializations in medicine. The schedule was punishing. The stress was unrelenting. I observed colleagues experiencing burnout, abandoning the program, transitioning to less demanding specializations. I persevered, not because I needed to demonstrate something to my father. I continued, because each time I held a human cardiac organ in my hands, each time I witnessed a flatline transform into a stable rhythm, I understood this was precisely what I was destined to accomplish. By 32, I had achieved attending surgeon status at Stanford Medical Center. Among the limited number of women in my division, board-certified, published, respected, and my family possessed no awareness. My mother knew I worked at some medical facility. That represented the extent of it. She never requested specifics, and I never volunteered them. I wore my Stanford medical ring daily, a gold band featuring the university insignia. I purchased it independently the day I graduated. It wasn't ostentatious. Most individuals wouldn't even register it, but I noticed it every time I prepared for surgical procedures. Every time I needed to recall my identity and what I'd endured to arrive there, that ring served as my evidence, my silent defiance. Then one evening, my mother telephoned, and everything I'd spent 12 years evading came flooding back. It was 9 o'clock on a Tuesday when my phone illuminated with my mother's name. She exclusively called late when she wanted to avoid my father overhearing. "Celeste, sweetheart." Her voice barely rose above a whisper. "I have information to share. Preston's becoming engaged." I set down my wine glass and reclined against my kitchen counter. "That's wonderful, Mother. Extend my congratulations to him. There's going to be a celebration at the Ridgewood Country Club. Your father desired something substantial, 150 guests, all his professional connections, golf partners, the complete arrangement. I recognize that establishment. Annual membership expenses commenced at $50,000. The type of venue where handshakes, finalized agreements, and family names carried substantial weight. "Sounds elaborate," I commented, maintaining vocal neutrality. "You're welcome to attend if you wish." She paused. "But your father, he doesn't want anyone introducing you as a physician or anything similar. He mentioned you should simply attend as Preston's sister. Keep things uncomplicated. Keep things uncomplicated. Don't overshadow the favored child." Did he forward me an invitation? Silence. "Mother?" It was simpler, this approach. He didn't want to formalize it. "You understand his nature." I understood his nature precisely. "When is it scheduled?" "Saturday the 14th, 7 o'clock in the evening." I accessed my schedule. No surgeries planned, no on-call responsibilities. Part of me wanted to decline. The sensible part. The part that had invested 12 years constructing an existence that didn't require their validation. But another part, the part that still remembered being 18 and folding that acceptance notification into my pocket, needed to witness this conclusion. "I'll attend," I stated. My mother released her breath with relief. "Just don't wear anything excessively attention-attracting, acceptable. Preston is the focal point that evening." "Naturally, Mother. Preston's perpetually the focal point." I hired a private car service to the country club. I didn't want to manage valet services or face questions regarding my vehicle, my occupation, my existence. I simply wanted to enter quietly, offer my respects, and depart quietly. The Ridgewood Country Club appeared exactly as I anticipated. White traditional architecture, crystal lighting fixtures visible through the elevated windows, a manicured lawn extending toward an 18-hole golf facility. Affluence emanated from every corner. At the entrance, a security personnel in a pressed jacket consulted his clipboard. Name? Celeste Brighton. He examined the list, examined it again, displayed confusion. "I'm not locating a Celeste Brighton." Naturally not. I retrieved my phone and contacted my mother. 2 rings later, she materialized at the entrance, flustered and apologetic. "She's accompanying me," Mother informed the guard, guiding me inside. "She's family." Family? The term felt meaningless. I'd selected my attire deliberately. A simple navy blue silk garment, refined, subtle, nothing that would attract notice. My sole personal touch was my Stanford ring, which I wore on my right hand as I consistently did. The ballroom resonated with conversation. Crystal glasses produced gentle sounds. A string ensemble performed something classical in the corner. Everywhere I directed my attention, I observed designer labels and rehearsed smiles. My father stood near the entrance, welcoming guests with a confident handshake and a politician's expression. When he noticed me, his expression flickered momentarily before settling into cool indifference. He acknowledged once, then returned to the couple he was addressing. No embrace, no welcome, just an acknowledgement. Like I was a distant acquaintance he felt obligated to recognize. A man beside him inquired, "Edmund, who's that individual?" My father's response was polished, rehearsed, dismissive. "Just a family member." I walked past him without speaking, heading toward the bar. That's when I noticed her, a woman in a white garment, staring at my ring. At 8 o'clock precisely, the music diminished, and a spotlight illuminated the small platform at the front of the ballroom. My father stepped up to the microphone, champagne glass in hand, Rolex gleaming under the illumination. Ladies and gentlemen, he commenced, his voice carrying the rehearsed warmth of someone who had invested decades commanding executive meetings. Thank you all for attending tonight to commemorate a very significant occasion. The room quieted. 150 faces turned toward him with courteous attention. Tonight, we honor my son Preston, the distinction of the Brighton family, our sole accomplished offspring. The word struck me like a physical impact. Our sole accomplished offspring. I stood motionless near the back of the room, champagne untouched in my hand as my father continued. Preston is currently completing his medical training and will shortly become a physician. He represents everything this family embodies: dedication, commitment, and the determination to pursue excellence. Applause circulated through the crowd. Preston stood near the platform, radiating satisfaction, accepting congratulations from individuals who probably didn't understand the first thing about him. The Brighton family has consistently believed in investing in the future, my father proceeded, and Preston is evidence that those investments yield results. I felt eyes upon me. A few guests who knew I existed, friends of my mother perhaps, glanced my direction with something resembling sympathy. They knew. They could perceive what was transpiring. A woman beside me leaned toward her husband and whispered, "Isn't that his daughter, the elder one?" "I thought they exclusively had the one son," he whispered back. That's when I comprehended. My father hadn't simply ignored me. He had eliminated me from existence. I placed my champagne glass on a nearby table, my hand steadier than I anticipated, and turned toward the exit. But someone was already approaching me. She was beautiful in the manner brides-to-be consistently are, radiant, luminous, wrapped in cream-colored silk that probably exceeded my first month's rent during medical school. But it wasn't her garment that stopped me. It was her eyes. They were focused on my hand, on my ring. "Pardon me," she stated, closing the distance between us with rapid, purposeful steps. "I apologize for bothering you, but do you work at Stanford Medical?" My heart stuttered. "Yes," I responded carefully. "I do." "Are you a surgeon?" The ballroom noise seemed to diminish. The clinking glasses, the murmured conversations, all of it dissolved into background noise as I looked at this woman, really examined her, and felt the memory surface. 3 years prior, 2 in the morning, a 26-year-old woman, chest crushed in a vehicle collision, hemorrhaging on my operating table. 7 hours of surgery, uncertain until the final moment. I remembered her face. Younger then, pale, hovering between life and death. "Sloan," I stated, her name emerging from somewhere deep in my memory. "Sloan Whitmore." Her hand flew to her mouth. Tears formed in her eyes. "It's you. Dear God, it's really you." Before I could respond, Preston appeared at her side, his smile rigid with confusion. "Darling, what's happening?" He looked at me, then back at Sloan. "Do you know my sister?" Sloane's head snapped toward him. "Your sister?" Her voice fractured. "Preston, you never informed me what your sister does professionally." Preston's jaw tightened. I could observe him calculating, attempting to control the narrative. "She works at a medical facility," he stated quickly. "Some administrative position." Sloan stared at him. Then she stared at me. "Administrative?" she repeated slowly. "Preston, this woman preserved my life." Preston's face cycled through 3 expressions in 2 seconds. Confusion, panic, and then a forced smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Darling, let's not create a disturbance." He reached for Sloane's arm. "There are some significant people I want you to meet. Mr. Thompson from Dad's previous firm is here. And Preston." Sloane withdrew her arm. "Did you hear what I just stated?" "I heard you. And that's excellent. Genuinely. But we can reconnect with Celeste later." He shot me a look. The identical look he used to give me when we were children, and I accidentally achieved superior grades. "Correct, sis." I remained silent. I simply observed. "Why didn't you inform me your sister was a physician?" Sloane pressed. "She's not. I mean, she's..." Preston stumbled over his words. "Listen, it's complicated. Our family is complicated. Can we please just enjoy the celebration? Complicated how? The guests nearest to us had started to notice. Heads were turning, whispers spreading like ripples in water. Preston lowered his voice, his smile becoming strained. Celeste, can you just depart? This is my evening. You've already caused sufficient trouble just by appearing. I felt the familiar sting, the one I'd spent years learning to ignore. I'm not causing anything, Preston. I'm standing here. You understand what I mean. His voice dropped to a hiss. You constantly have to make everything about yourself. Even now. Even tonight. Sloane looked between us, her expression shifting from confusion to something harder, something suspicious. Preston, she stated quietly, I'm going to ask you one more time. Why didn't I know your sister is a surgeon? He didn't answer, and in that silence, I witnessed the first crack in the flawless image my family had spent decades constructing. My father materialized beside us like he possessed a sixth sense for disruptions in his carefully orchestrated occasions. What's transpiring here? His voice was low, controlled, but I could observe the tension in his jaw. Nothing, Father. Preston jumped in immediately. Celeste was just departing. I wasn't, I stated calmly. My father's eyes shifted to Sloane, then to the small cluster of guests pretending not to eavesdrop. Celeste. He stated my name like it was a problem requiring resolution. This is Preston's engagement celebration. If you're not going to be supportive, perhaps it's optimal if I what, Father? Disappear like I consistently do? Sloane stepped forward. Mr. Brighton, did you know that your daughter is a medical facility employee? My father interjected smoothly. Yes, we're aware. But tonight isn't about her. Tonight is about Preston and his future. His future, his career, his success. Perpetually his. A man nearby, someone I recognized vaguely as one of my father's golf associates, cleared his throat. Edmund, I didn't realize you had a daughter. You've never mentioned her. My father's smile tightened. We're a private family, Richard. Celeste selected a different path than the rest of us. She's independent. Independent. The word dripped with dismissal. Perhaps excessively independent, he added, lowering his voice just enough that only those closest could hear, but loud enough to make his point. Some children desire to be part of the family. Others, he shrugged, others don't have anything to contribute. The air around me went cold. I had invested 12 years building a career, preserving lives, earning every credential through effort and sacrifice. And in 3 sentences, my father had reduced all of it to nothing. Sloane was staring at him like she'd never seen him before. And maybe she hadn't. Not the genuine him. I felt the heat crawling up my neck, the familiar urge to shrink, to apologize, to disappear. For 18 years, I had lived under this man's roof and learned that survival meant silence. For 12 more, I had constructed an existence where his opinion didn't matter. But standing there in that glittering ballroom surrounded by strangers who thought my father was an admirable man, I realized something. I was finished shrinking. I took a breath, then another. My heartbeat slowed to the steady rhythm I used before surgical procedures. Calm, focused, precise. I'm not departing, Father. My father blinked. Pardon me? I came to commemorate my brother's engagement. I'm going to remain, have a glass of water, and congratulate the happy couple. I smoothed the front of my garment. That's what family does, isn't it? His face reddened. Celeste, you don't have to introduce me to anyone. You don't even have to acknowledge I exist. I'm accustomed to that. I met his eyes without flinching. But I'm not departing because my presence makes you uncomfortable. For a moment, no one spoke. Then I turned and walked to the bar, my heels clicking against the marble floor with a confidence I had earned in operating rooms and overnight shifts, and years of proving myself to people far more intimidating than Edmund Brighton. I ordered sparkling water with lime. The bartender slid it across the counter with a small acknowledgement. I took a sip and watched the celebration continue around me. The forced laughter, the air kisses, the elaborate performance of wealthy people pretending everything was acceptable. I didn't need to create a disturbance. I didn't need to expose anyone. I simply needed to stand my ground. And from across the room, I saw Sloane watching me with something that resembled respect. She was walking toward me again. I want to pause here and ask you something. Have you ever been dismissed by the people who were supposed to cherish you the most? Have you ever achieved something remarkable only to have your family pretend it didn't occur? If that's you, leave a comment below. Just type "I understand." Let me know I'm not alone in this. And if you want to know what Sloane stated to me next, keep watching. Don't forget to hit that like button if you're supporting me. Before Sloane could reach me, my mother intercepted her path. "Sweetheart, let me introduce you to some of our friends from the club," Mother stated brightly, steering Sloane toward a group of older women adorned in pearls. Then she doubled back to me, her smile fixed, but her eyes pleading. "Celeste, honey." She gripped my elbow, her fingers trembling slightly. "Please don't do this. Not tonight." "Don't do what, Mother?" "I'm just standing here. You understand what I mean." She glanced over her shoulder, checking if my father was observing. "Your father is already upset. Preston is anxious. This is supposed to be a joyful evening, and my presence ruins that." She didn't answer. She didn't have to. "Mother, do you even know what I do professionally?" Her eyes dropped to the floor. "You know I work at Stanford Medical. You know I'm a surgeon. You've known for years." My voice was quiet, but firm. "Why have you never informed him?" "Your father wouldn't." She trailed off. "He wouldn't have believed me. He'd already formed his opinion about you." "So you just permitted him?" "I didn't have a choice." "You had a choice every single day, Mother. You just didn't exercise it." Her eyes glistened. For a moment, I saw the mother I remembered from childhood, the one who used to sneak me extra dessert and tell me I could be anything I desired. That woman had vanished a long time ago. "I know you've done well for yourself," she whispered. "I'm proud of you. I just cannot." "Cannot what?" Stated out loud. She squeezed my hand once, then released it. "Please, just return home, Celeste, before things deteriorate further." "They're already deteriorated, Mother. They've been deteriorated my entire existence." I watched her walk away, and for the first time, I didn't feel angry. I just felt sad. I drifted to the corner of the ballroom near the floor-to-ceiling windows that overlooked the golf facility. Outside, the landscaping illumination cast golden pools across the pristine grass. I could observe the outline of luxury vehicles in the parking area. Mercedes, BMWs, a few Porsches, the world my father desperately wanted to belong to. Inside, 150 people laughed and clinked glasses and celebrated a future that had nothing to do with me. I looked down at my ring, the Stanford insignia catching the light. I thought about the day I earned it. The ceremony was modest, held in a conference room with inadequate coffee and fluorescent lighting. My classmates had families filling the seats, parents dabbing tears, siblings capturing photos. I sat alone in the third row. When they called my name, I walked up, shook the dean's hand, and accepted my ring with no one to witness it. Afterward, a janitor setting up chairs for the next occasion stated, "Congratulations, Doctor." He was the sole person who acknowledged my accomplishment that day. I pressed my thumb against the ring now, feeling its weight. What am I even doing here? I had invested 12 years constructing an existence that didn't require their validation, an existence filled with colleagues who respected me, patients who trusted me, work that mattered. Why was I standing in a corner at my brother's engagement celebration, hoping for something I knew I'd never receive? Through the glass, I watched a couple stroll arm in arm toward the garden, happy, oblivious, normal. Maybe I should just depart. Let them have their flawless evening. But then my phone vibrated. A text from Dr. Marcus Yates, a colleague back at Stanford. "Hey Celeste, random question. Your brother Preston? Did he finish his residency? Just encountered him at a pharmaceutical conference. Thought he was still in training." I stared at the screen and everything changed. I read the message 3 times. Thought he was still in training. Preston wasn't in training. According to my mother's updates, the few she shared, Preston was finishing up his residency and about to become a physician any day now. That was the story. the narrative my father broadcast to anyone who would listen. But Marcus had just encountered Preston at a pharmaceutical sales conference, not a medical conference, a sales conference. I opened a browser on my phone and searched Preston Brighton Merck. 3 results appeared: a LinkedIn profile, a company directory listing, a conference speaker bio from 6 months ago, Preston Brighton, pharmaceutical sales representative, Merck Incorporated. No residency, no medical license, no doctor preceding his name. He had withdrawn 2 years ago based on the dates. My father had invested $180,000 on Preston's medical education, and Preston hadn't even completed it. He'd quietly transitioned to pharmaceutical sales and never informed anyone. For 2 years, he'd been lying to our entire family. I slipped my phone back into my clutch, my mind racing. This wasn't my weapon. I didn't come here to expose anyone. But as I watched my father work the room, shaking hands, boasting about his future physician son, I realized something. The truth didn't need me to weaponize it. The truth had a method of surfacing independently. I thought about every patient who had ever thanked me following surgery, every life I had helped preserve, every 18-hour shift, every sacrifice, every moment I had selected this path despite having no one to support me. I didn't need to prove anything to my father, but I also didn't need to protect my brother's deceptions. I straightened my shoulders and looked across the room. Sloane was finally breaking free from the group of women. She was heading my direction. This time I didn't look away. I met Sloane halfway near one of the tall cocktail tables draped in white linen. "I apologize about earlier," she stated, slightly breathless. "Preston's mother kept pulling me around to meet people. It's acceptable. It's your celebration. It's supposed to be." She bit her lip. "But nothing about tonight feels correct." I studied her face, the furrow between her brows, the tension in her shoulders. This wasn't bridal radiance. This was doubt. "Sloane, how much do you know about Preston's career?" She blinked at the question. "He's finishing his residency, internal medicine. He's supposed to commence his fellowship next year. That's what he informed you?" "That's what he's informed everyone." Her voice wavered. "Why? Is there something I should know?" I hesitated. This wasn't my secret to divulge, but it also wasn't my deception to protect. I just received a message from a colleague. He encountered Preston at a pharmaceutical sales conference last week. "A sales conference?" Sloane shook her head. "No, Preston doesn't engage in sales. He's a physician. Well, almost a physician." "Sloane," I kept my voice gentle but direct. I looked it up. "Preston works for Merck. He's listed as a pharmaceutical sales representative. He has been for at least 2 years. The color drained from her face. "That's not possible. He shows me his schedule. He discusses his patients. She stopped. Something clicked behind her eyes. "Dear God," she whispered. "The hours. He's consistently so vague about where he goes. I thought it was because he was occupied at the medical facility." "I'm not attempting to hurt you," I stated. "I just think you deserve to know the truth before you marry him." Sloane stared at me. Then she looked across the room at Preston, who was laughing at something his father stated. "He's been lying to me for 2 years. I didn't answer. I didn't have to. Sloane stood motionless for a long moment, processing. Then she turned back to me with a different look in her eyes, sharper now, more focused. "Wait, can we return to what I stated earlier?" She took a breath. 3 years ago, I was in a vehicle collision, a severe one. My sternum was crushed. I had internal hemorrhaging. They informed my parents I probably wouldn't survive the night. I nodded slowly. I remember. The surgeon who preserved me, Dr. Celeste Brighton, operated on me for 7 hours. She held my heart in her hands. Sloane's voice cracked. When I regained consciousness in the ICU, she was there. She held my hand and stated, "You fought hard. Now you get to live." I remembered that too. I remembered her parents sobbing in the waiting room. I remembered the moment her vitals stabilized, and I finally exhaled. "That surgeon was you," Sloane stated, "wasn't it?" "Yes." Tears spilled down her cheeks. Before I could react, she pulled me into a tight embrace. I've thought about you every single day for 3 years, she whispered against my shoulder. I returned to the medical facility once to find you, but they stated you transferred to a different department. I never got to thank you properly. You just did. She pulled back, wiping her eyes with the back of her hand. This whole time you were Preston's sister. He talked about you like you were nobody, like you didn't matter to him. I don't. But you matter to me. Her voice hardened. You preserved my life, and his family treats you like you're invisible. She looked toward the platform where the microphone still stood from my father's earlier speech. No, she stated quietly. That's not acceptable. That's not acceptable at all. Sloan, you don't have to. Yes, I do. She squeezed my hands. The truth needs to emerge. All of it. What are you going to do? I asked. Sloan glanced toward the platform, then back at me. I was supposed to give a speech later. Thank Preston's family for welcoming me. Talk about how excited I am for our future together. And now I'm going to tell the truth. She straightened her shoulders. Not to hurt Preston, not to embarrass your father, just because I don't want to build a marriage on deceptions. Sloan, this is your engagement celebration. Are you certain you want to do this here in front of everyone? Where else? She laughed bitterly. Preston's been lying to me for 2 years. Your father just stood up there and called Preston his sole accomplished offspring when you are the one who actually became a physician, a surgeon, someone who preserves lives. She shook her head. I almost died, Celeste. Do you know what that does to a person? It makes you realize how brief life is, how precious. I promised myself after that collision that I would never waste time on things that weren't genuine. Her eyes met mine. Preston isn't genuine. The future we planned isn't genuine. But what you did for me, that was genuine. I felt something shift in my chest. Not satisfaction, not triumph, something quieter, relief perhaps, that someone finally saw me. I'm not going to accuse anyone of anything, Sloan stated. I'm just going to tell my story and let people draw their own conclusions. And Preston can explain himself, if he even can. She touched my arm. Will you remain? I don't want to do this without you here. I thought about departing, thought about protecting myself from the fallout, but I had been protecting myself for 12 years. Maybe it was time to just stand in the truth. I'll remain, I stated. Sloan nodded and walked toward the platform. The MC, a friend of my father's who had been managing the evening's program, tapped the microphone. Ladies and gentlemen, if I could have your attention, please. Our beautiful bride-to-be, Sloan Whitmore, would like to share a few words. Polite applause circulated through the room. Sloan climbed the 3 steps to the small platform, her cream silk garment catching the light. She looked every bit the perfect fiancée, poised, beautiful, gracious, but I could observe her hands trembling slightly as she adjusted the microphone. 150 guests turned their attention to her. My father stood near the front, radiating with proprietary pride. Preston positioned himself at the base of the platform, ready to gaze adoringly at his bride. Thank you all for being here tonight, Sloan commenced, her voice clear and steady. I'm so grateful to commemorate with Preston's family and friends. My father nodded approvingly. Before I talk about Preston, Sloan continued, I want to share something personal, something that shaped who I am today. A murmur of interest passed through the crowd. This wasn't the standard appreciation speech they were anticipating. 3 years ago, I was in a vehicle collision. A semi-trailer ran a red signal and struck my driver's side door at 50 miles an hour. Gasps, sympathetic murmurs. I was rushed to Stanford Medical with a crushed sternum and massive internal hemorrhaging. The physicians informed my parents I had a 20% chance of surviving the night. Sloan paused, letting the weight of her words settle over the room. But I did survive because of one person, one extraordinary surgeon who operated on me for 7 hours and refused to give up. I felt the eyes beginning to shift. People were looking around, wondering where this was heading. Sloan looked directly at me. That surgeon is in this room tonight. The ballroom went silent. Her name, Sloan stated, her voice unwavering, is Dr. Celeste Brighton. She's a cardiothoracic surgeon at Stanford Medical Center, one of the finest in the country. She pointed toward me, and 150 heads swiveled in my direction. She's also Preston's sister. The silence exploded into whispers. I stood motionless in my corner, heart pounding as Sloane continued. I didn't know this until tonight. Preston never mentioned that his sister was a physician. In fact, his family introduced her to me as someone who works in medical facility administration. Sloane's voice sharpened. But that's not accurate. Dr. Brighton isn't an administrator. She's a surgeon, a brilliant one, the woman who gave me a second chance at life. My father's face had gone pale. Preston looked like he wanted the floor to swallow him whole. What's even more confusing, Sloane proceeded, is that just a few minutes ago, Mr. Brighton stood on this very platform and introduced Preston as the sole accomplished child in the family. She let that sink in. I'd like someone to explain to me how that makes sense. How does a family ignore the daughter who became a surgeon while celebrating the son who... She stopped herself, took a breath. I apologize. I didn't come up here to attack anyone. I came up here because the truth matters to me. And the truth is that Dr. Celeste Brighton preserved my life. Without her, I wouldn't be standing here. I wouldn't have met Preston. I wouldn't have any of this. Sloane looked at me again, tears glistening in her eyes. Celeste, would you please come up here? I'd like everyone to meet the woman who made my future possible. Every eye in the room was on me. I had two choices, shrink or stand. I chose to stand. I walked through the parted crowd, my heels clicking against the marble with each step. The whispers followed me like a wave. That's the daughter. Edmund never mentioned a daughter. A surgeon at Stanford. Why would they conceal that? Something's very wrong here. I climbed the steps and stood beside Sloane. She reached for my hand and squeezed it. From the crowd, a man's voice called out. Dr. Lawrence Hartwell, a cardiologist who was apparently among my father's golf circle. Celeste Brighton? He stepped forward, recognition dawning on his face. I attended your presentation at the American Heart Association conference last spring. Your research on minimally invasive mitral valve repair was exceptional. More murmurs, more turning heads. Thank you, I stated simply. Sloane leaned into the microphone. For those who don't know, and apparently that includes Preston's own family, Dr. Brighton is board certified in cardiothoracic surgery. She's published in peer-reviewed journals. She preserved countless lives, including mine. She turned to face my father, who stood motionless near the front, his face a mask of barely controlled fury. Mr. Brighton, I mean no disrespect, but I have to ask, why did you tell this room that Preston is your sole accomplished child? Your daughter is standing right here. She's accomplished more than most people will in a lifetime. The room held its breath. My father's mouth opened, closed, opened again. This is hardly the time or place. It seems like precisely the right time and place to me, Sloane stated calmly. You chose to commemorate Preston's success publicly. Why can't we acknowledge Celeste's? Someone in the back started clapping. Then another person, then another. Within seconds, half the room was applauding. Not for my father, not for Preston, but for me. And I hadn't requested any of it. The truth had simply found its way into the light. Sloane handed me the microphone. For a moment, I just stood there looking out at the sea of faces. Some curious, some sympathetic, some uncomfortable. I could have destroyed my father right there. I could have laid out every slight, every rejection, every moment he made me feel worthless. But that wasn't who I wanted to be. Thank you, Sloane. I kept my voice calm, measured. And thank you, everyone, for your kind applause. I didn't come here tonight anticipating any of this. I paused, collecting my thoughts. I came because Preston is my brother, and I wanted to wish him well. That's it. I didn't come to cause drama, or make anyone uncomfortable. My father's posture relaxed slightly. He thought I was backing down, but I also won't pretend to be something I'm not. I met his eyes. I'm not a medical facility administrator. I'm not just a family member. I'm a cardiothoracic surgeon. I've invested 12 years training for this career, years I funded entirely independently. The room was utterly silent. I'm not telling you this to boast. I'm telling you this because the truth matters. Sloane's correct about that. I turned to look at her. 3 years ago, she came into my operating room more dead than alive. I invested 7 hours fighting to keep her heart beating. When she regained consciousness, I promised her that her fight was worth it. Sloane wiped tears from her cheeks. I don't need anyone's validation, I continued, turning back to the crowd. I stopped needing that a long time ago, but I also won't stand quietly while the people who should have supported me pretend I don't exist. I placed the microphone back on the stand. That's all I have to share. Thank you for listening. I stepped back, and that's when Preston lost control. Preston stormed onto the platform, his face flushed red, his carefully styled hair starting to come undone. Are you serious right now? He grabbed the microphone, his voice cracking with barely contained rage. This is my engagement celebration, and you just had to make it about yourself, didn't you? Sloane stepped toward him. Preston, no. He jabbed a finger in my direction. She's consistently been like this, consistently attempting to prove she's superior to me, constantly competing. Even now, even on the one evening that's supposed to be mine, she can't just let me have it. The guests shifted uncomfortably. This wasn't the charming Preston they thought they knew. I didn't do anything, Preston. My voice was steady. Sloane asked me a question and I answered honestly. Honestly? He laughed bitterly. You want to talk about honesty? Fine. Let's talk about how you abandon this family. How you never come home. How you act like you're so much superior to all of us. Preston. My voice cut through his tirade like a scalpel. When were you going to inform everyone you withdrew from your residency 2 years ago? The room went absolutely still. Preston's face drained of color. What? You're not becoming a physician, Preston. You're a pharmaceutical sales representative. You have been for 2 years. I paused. Father's $180,000, and you couldn't even complete it. For a long moment, no one moved. Then Sloane stepped forward and slowly, deliberately pulled the engagement ring from her finger. I asked you one thing, Preston. One thing. When we started dating, I stated, please never lie to me. She placed the ring in his trembling hand. You've been lying to me since the day we met. She walked off the platform without looking back. Preston stood alone under the spotlight, holding a ring no one wanted anymore. Can I be honest with you for a second? That moment, watching Preston stand there with that ring, I didn't feel victorious. I felt tired. 12 years of silence, and this was how it concluded. Let me know in the comments. Do you think Preston deserved this, or do you feel sorry for him? And if you're still here, if you want to know what happened with my father, keep watching. This is the part I waited 12 years for. My father finally moved. He climbed the platform steps slowly, like a man walking toward his own sentencing. His Rolex caught the light as he reached for his son's shoulder. Preston, we'll discuss this at home. His voice was low, controlled, but I could observe the vein pulsing in his temple. Everyone, please, let's not let this small misunderstanding ruin the evening. Misunderstanding? Dr. Hartwell stepped forward from the crowd. Edmund, your daughter is one of the most respected cardiothoracic surgeons on the West Coast. I've read her research. I've watched her present at national conferences, and you've been telling everyone she's an administrator. More voices joined in. The carefully cultivated facade was crumbling. My father turned to me, his face a complicated mix of anger and something I'd never seen before. Fear. Celeste, this isn't the place. You made it the place, Father. When you stood up there and called Preston your sole accomplished child in front of everyone I grew up around, I was just Preston needed. He stumbled over his words. You don't understand the pressure he's been under. Pressure? I almost laughed. You paid for his entire education. You supported every decision he ever made. And when he failed, you covered for him. I stepped closer. I worked 3 jobs to put myself through school. I slept 5 hours a night for 4 years. I earned everything I have with absolutely no assistance from you. That was your choice. No, that was your choice. You decided I didn't deserve support because I was born female. I kept my voice level. I'm not requesting an apology. I stopped waiting for that years ago. He stared at me. speechless for perhaps the first time in his existence. But I won't let you erase me anymore. Not in front of these people. Not ever again. Sloane stood at the bottom of the platform steps, arms crossed, waiting. Preston descended slowly, still clutching the engagement ring like it might save him. Sloane, please let me explain. Explain what? Her voice was calm, but I recognized that calm. It was the same calm I used when a surgery was going wrong, the moment right before decisive action. I was going to inform you when, on our wedding night, after we purchased a house. She shook her head. You informed me you were a physician, Preston. You showed me your schedule. You complained about difficult patients. All of it was deceptions. Not deceptions. Just, I was protecting you. Protecting me from what? The truth? Sloane laughed, but there was no humor in it. I told you about the worst moment of my existence. I told you about my collision, my surgery, my recovery. I was completely honest with you about everything. Preston stated nothing. And now I discover that the surgeon who preserved my life, the person I've wanted to thank for 3 years, is your sister. A sister you deliberately kept hidden from me. That's not... Your father just introduced you as his sole accomplished child while your sister stood 15 feet away. A sister who actually became a physician. And you were acceptable with that. Preston's silence was damning. Sloane took a deep breath. I loved you, Preston. I genuinely did. But I can't marry someone I don't know. And clearly I don't know you at all. She turned and walked toward the exit, her heels clicking with finality against the marble floor. Preston called after her. Sloane, please. She didn't look back. The ring fell from Preston's hand and bounced on the floor with a small, pathetic sound. No one moved to retrieve it. In all the chaos, I hadn't noticed my mother approaching. She climbed onto the platform, something I'd never witnessed her do in my entire existence. Vivian Brighton didn't create disturbances. She didn't draw attention. She smoothed things over and kept the peace. But not tonight. Celeste. I turned to face her. Her eyes were red-rimmed, her careful makeup starting to smudge. I'm so sorry. The words hung in the air between us. I knew what you accomplished, she continued, her voice trembling. I followed your career from a distance. I read about your research. I saw the medical center announcements when you were promoted. I felt something crack in my chest. Then why didn't you ever state anything? Because I was afraid. She wiped her eyes with the back of her hand. Afraid of your father. Afraid of disrupting the family. Afraid of... She took a shaky breath. Afraid of admitting I failed you. My father stood motionless behind her, watching this unfold like a man witnessing his world collapse. You were 18 years old, and I let him tell you that you didn't matter. I should have stood up for you. I should have protected you. Her voice broke, but I didn't. And you had to protect yourself. She reached for my hands and I let her take them. The woman you became, the surgeon, the success, all of it. You did that alone, despite us, not because of us. She squeezed my fingers. I'm so proud of you, Celeste. I should have stated it years ago. I felt tears threatening to fall, the first I'd allowed myself in a long time. Thank you, Mother. I managed. That means more than you know. She pulled me into an embrace, a genuine one, the kind I hadn't felt since I was a child. Behind us, my father stood silent, watching, processing. For once, he had nothing to state. I held my mother for a long moment. Then I gently stepped back. The ballroom had grown quiet. Guests were starting to drift toward the exits, conversations hushed and uncomfortable. The celebration was concluded in every way that mattered. Preston had disappeared, probably to process his wounds somewhere private. My father still stood on the platform looking older than I'd ever seen him. I didn't have anything remaining to state to either of them. I should depart, I informed my mother. She nodded, still holding my hand. Will you call me soon? Yes, I'll call. As I descended the platform, Sloane intercepted me near the entrance. Celeste, wait. Her eyes were dry now, her composure restored. I don't know how to thank you for tonight, and for everything else. You don't need to thank me. I touched her arm briefly. You preserved yourself tonight, Sloane. You chose truth over comfort. That requires courage. I learned it from you. She smiled weakly. 3 years ago, when I regained consciousness in that medical facility room, you told me something I never forgot. What was that? You stated, "The hardest part is concluded. Now all you have to do is live." She took a shaky breath. I think I finally understand what you meant. I embraced her briefly but genuinely. Take care of yourself, Sloane. You're going to be acceptable. She nodded and stepped aside. I walked out of the Ridgewood Country Club into the cool night air. The valet scrambled around luxury vehicles, but I walked past them, retrieving my phone to request a private car service. The automatic doors closed behind me, muffling the murmurs and the music. I took a deep breath. For the first time in 12 years, my chest didn't feel constricted. I had stated my piece. I had stood my ground. Now I could return home. A lot can change in 7 days. Sloane called off the engagement. She sent me a text the following morning. Thank you for telling me the truth. Starting over is frightening, but it's superior to living a deception. We've stayed in contact. She's contemplating returning to therapy, processing everything. I think she'll be acceptable. Preston finally confessed to my parents about withdrawing. According to my mother, who has been calling me every other day now, my father didn't take it well. He discontinued Preston's financial support until, as he phrased it, Preston has a genuine plan for his existence. Ironic considering he never provided me any support to discontinue in the first place. My mother started attending family counseling. She asked my father to join her. He refused initially, but after a week of silence from everyone he used to impress, he agreed to at least one session. I'm not holding my breath for transformation. Some people are too set in their methods, but the fact that he's attempting, even slightly, is more than I ever anticipated. As for me, I returned to work. The Monday following the celebration, I had a double bypass scheduled at 7 in the morning. I scrubbed in, made my incisions, and invested 4 hours doing what I do optimally. When the patient's heart started beating independently again, I felt that familiar surge of purpose. This is why I do what I do. Not for recognition, not for validation, for moments like this, when someone receives a second chance at existence because I refused to give up. My phone vibrated in my locker following the surgery. A text from a number I didn't recognize. This is your father. Can we talk? I stared at it for a long time. Then I typed back. When you're ready to listen, I'll be here. You might think this story concludes with me forgiving my father, with a tearful reconciliation and a happily ever after. That's not how genuine life operates. The truth is, I'm still determining what my relationship with my family resembles. Maybe we'll find our way back to something healthy. Maybe we won't. Either way, I've made peace with it. Because here's what I learned over the past 12 years. You cannot control how other people perceive you. You cannot force someone to acknowledge your worth. You can only control who you are and what you do with your existence. I invested too many years waiting for my father to be proud of me, hoping that one more achievement, one more award, one more success would finally make him see me. But some people aren't capable of seeing beyond their own expectations. That's not your failure. It's theirs. The genuine victory wasn't standing on that platform while Sloane informed everyone who I was. The genuine victory was the moment I realized I didn't need anyone's approval to know my own value. I'm a cardiothoracic surgeon. I've preserved lives. I've constructed a career that means something. No one provided that to me. I earned it. And if my father ever wants to be part of my existence, he'll have to earn his way back too. That's not cruelty. That's boundaries. Establishing boundaries doesn't mean severing people off permanently. It means stating, I care about you, but I will not permit you to hurt me anymore. It means protecting the existence you've constructed, even from the people who were supposed to help you construct it. If you're watching this and you recognize yourself in my story, the overlooked daughter, the underestimated child, the one who was never quite enough, please hear me. You are enough. You always were. Don't wait for them to perceive it. Perceive it in yourself. After everything settled down, I had coffee with a friend, a psychologist who specializes in family dynamics. "Why do you think my father is like this?" I asked her. "Is he just a terrible person?" She shook her head. "People are rarely that simple." She explained that my father likely grew up in an environment where his own worth was tied entirely to achievement, specifically male achievement. His father probably measured success identically, and his father before him. It's a generational pattern. She stated he internalized the message that sons carry the family legacy and daughters are secondary, not because he despises women, but because that's literally all he knows. That doesn't excuse what he did. No, it doesn't. But it explains it. She stirred her coffee. The saddest part is he probably thought he was protecting you. In his perspective, pushing you toward marriage and away from career was him being an admirable father, saving you from the struggle he went through. I sat with that for a while. It didn't make me less angry, but it helped me understand that my father's failure wasn't personal. He was simply incorrect, catastrophically, painfully incorrect. And some people never learn to be anything else. The lesson I want to leave you with is this: you cannot heal wounds you refuse to acknowledge exist. Whether it's a parent who dismissed you, a sibling who competed with you, or a system that underestimated you, the path forward starts with honesty. Be honest about what transpired. Be honest about how it affected you. And be honest about what you're willing to accept going forward. That's the story. Thank you for remaining with me through all of it. If this resonated with you, please leave a comment. Tell me your story. I'd love to hear it. And if you want more stories like this, check the description for recommendations. Take care of yourselves. You're worth it.